You're listening to the #1 podcast for oil and gas professionals. What's up? Mike Fry. I'm here with Dallas Bozeman.
Hey, what's going on?
How's it going, D?
Going good.
And we want to welcome you to another episode of the Deepwater Subsea podcast. Back to the basics.
Back to the basics.
Tell me a story about back to the basics.
Yeah, so we were talking at lunch today and just kind of kicking around some ideas. But so I part-time, I help out at a CrossFit gym, do a little coaching and stuff. And I came across a video, and it was if you know anything about Rich Fronin, this guy has been to the CrossFit Games several times. He's won it quite a few times as well.
That guy's a freak. He's a
freak of nature, completely. But so this video surfaces online of him doing a jump rope clinic. So the big thing in CrossFit is always, hey, can you do double unders? Which is basically you jump once, the rope passes underneath of you twice. Well, this clinic was teaching Rich Fronin how to go back to single unders. Of course, it's something that he's done, before, and he's done it thousands of times. But he got so focused on the double unders and advancing and doing advanced techniques that now going back to the basics, he's struggling. He can't do the single under. And even though it's comical to watch, it's something it really triggered in my mind and in your mind, kind of what does that look like applied to our business and applied to oil and gas? And it makes complete sense, because if I look back and I said, hey, if I was in a military setting and I was working advanced tactics and techniques all the time, that's great. But if I ever forgot fundamental marksmanship, then what good would it do? So it completely applies, and it makes sense that why would we ever get away from the basics and the things that we originally came in doing, and those original tools that we put in our arsenal, and how do we maintain those things that way that we can continue to grow?
No, I agree. And I think that, like you said, when we were talking about it, it's funny because if you don't practice it and you don't execute it over time, just neurologically, you're going to forget how to do it. And we were talking about this, and, playing football and being an athlete growing up, years of not playing sports. One of the neighbor kids threw me a football like 2 years ago and caught the ball. And I was like, all right, cool. And I went to throw it back all, swagged out and stuff, like thinking I was a 19-year-old quarterback. And next thing you know, I buried the ball about 20 feet in front of my face. Like I've never thrown a football in my life. The reason for that is just muscle memory. It was gone. It's like I might as well throw it with my right hand, and I'm left-handed because it looked that horribly. And I think it really comes down to, even like you said, the fundamentals and the workers today, if you're not constantly revisiting that kind of part-whole method, that learning and forgetting curve, sooner or later, you're just going to forget. And unfortunately, you might not forget 100% because you've been exposed to it. But when you really get into the details, kind of the fundamentals of an exercise, you're going to forget how to do it properly.
That's right. And even this week, my son's playing baseball now, so we're kind of getting back into that thing. And what I found is that if you don't revisit the fundamentals pretty frequently, it gets sloppy real quick. And I think our business gets sloppy. The way we handle our business gets sloppy because we start taking things, we're taking them for granted. We've advanced past that. We've kind of always had that knowledge in the back of our mind, like this is how business is done. This is how I've done it. I know how that works. But now I'm at a level where that's all I need. I just need to conceptually know how this operates. I don't need to always go put hands on it. But then I look back at whenever I was doing a lot of training for programs and for other people, there were things that I was solid at. I was really good at. But whenever we went back to, hey, can you teach someone the basics of the job of whatever it is? And we would go back to it. That was more nerve-wracking than teaching advanced techniques, because I was constantly doing the advanced techniques. I was confident in that. If you asked me to go back to the basics, I'm like, I could really lose some credibility here, because not only am I expected to teach these guys how to do it right, but it's been a while since I've done it. So if I'm going to go out there and try to show this thing, how it's done properly, how do you maintain it, and I can't remember those, man, guys are going to wonder, hey, can I follow this guy? Because, yeah, he's in an advanced position now, but he can't even remember how to do the basics. So there's actually a lot at stake when it comes to getting back to the fundamentals.
Yeah, and I think it's part of a leadership issue as well, because like you said, for you to get into that leadership position, obviously you have done that task before. But if you've been so detached from doing it, when a new person comes in and says, hey, can you help me with this? It's like, dude, you know how to do it. I mean, it's like, go ask somebody else to do it. because you don't want to, people don't want to embarrass themselves as not looking like they know what they're doing or knowing what they're talking about. And especially in that moment of I'll say that trust, that mentoring where a junior subordinate is coming to you saying, hey, I need help. And as you're walking up to the task, you're going, damn, I really don't remember how to do this. And so guys don't want to look stupid. So they kind of pawn it off, or they just don't engage in it at all. And I think that's a challenge for a lot of people, especially in this kind of run and gun, industry that we're in today, where everybody's under, kind of a time crunch where they really don't get back to, truly taking the time to revisit those simple tasks. And we've always said it before, it's the simple things that are getting us in trouble time and time again.
Yeah. So even stepping away from maintaining our own fundamental strengths and those original tools that we acquired, if we look at it from not only someone else's development, but the development of an organization, we talk a lot about active supervision. I think if we don't go back to the basics and we see how guys are doing the work and how it's being accomplished with our advanced knowledge now and knowing where we're at, there's no opportunity to adapt and change and become more efficient. Because if the guys doing the business now are doing business the same way you were doing it 10 years ago with the new technology, new advanced techniques, and you come back out and you go, man, with everything we've got going, there's got to be a better way to do this. Those guys don't know any more than you knew then. So take that knowledge, take those lessons learned, go back out, find out how the guys are doing the fundamental work now and see how it applies to the knowledge that you have. And then maybe there's some real opportunities to introduce efficiencies and become more creative, more adaptable, and overall perform at a lot higher proficiency.
No, I agree. And sometimes it takes just the maturity to step back and to do it. Because like I said, too many people, especially in our industry where you're supposed to be proud and all encompassing. And, I wasn't around obviously, I was born in 70, but the older generation of the oil field, which was, if you can't get it, I'll get someone else. You didn't have time to stop and ask for help. And if someone got injured, it's like, well, they're weak. So next. Today's world, completely different, safety first, reliability, it's just, I think we're at a point now where you have to, when you have those moments of downtime, you have to go back and revisit and just stay fresh on what's going on. And unfortunately, a lot of supervisors don't do that. And even more so when they get to the office, because they get detached. And being detached from the real world, I think, is where we start seeing those problems starting to take place.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a real opportunity for safety oversight as well. I think back, to the years that I spent in combat and kind of not necessarily bad habits, but things that we did as far as using demolition and how we controlled it and how we handled it. It was always in an operational manner. So if I came back to a stateside base to do a range clearance operation, and I'm walking around, with charges that have blasting caps in them, and I've got them in a cargo pocket, that's not going to fly. But in an operational setting, some of those things, depending on, how fast you were moving, who you were with, and how immediate that task needed to happen, well, then you risked your, or you did your kind of, what's your risk, what's your reward? The balance swings a little bit in an operational contingency. And I think the same thing can happen offshore and in our business as well, where we go out and we say, hey, ops tempo's up. We have a lot going on. This is something that fundamentally we know has risk associated with it, but we can continue to push this pace because the reward outweighs the risk in our minds at this time. But when we go back and we visit the fundamentals, we start realizing why we did it in the first place and why those safeties were in check. And we go, you know what, it's time to get back to the basics.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of like you were talking about with the exercising too. I mean, I couldn't go today after years of, call it deconditioning, and go back to the same lifts that I was doing back when I was an active, working out and lifting and stuff. You almost have to just start from scratch and really get back into how do we take it apart? What's the right way to do the maintenance? How do we operate it? How do we troubleshoot it? And unfortunately, that's the best way I can explain. I mean, if you used to squat or power lift or, especially complex exercises, combo exercises, if you go back and try to do that today, you're going to hurt yourself. And that's why when people teach lifting, a lot of times it's with, just a dowel or, a bar unloaded. And it's like, let's get the fundamentals down to like the real movement of the exercise before we start loading you up and making this difficult.
Yeah. And then, a good case of this was this morning, my 5 a.m. class that we go in, these are like our more advanced athletes. A lot of the guys who are really motivated. If you're going to come in and work out at 5 a.m., you're pretty locked in. You want to be there. So these guys, a lot of them have really good skills. They're good Olympic lifters. They're good power lifters. And they have those advanced techniques, those advanced movements down. And then today, before we get started as a warm-up, we just go through basic fundamentals. Hey, we're going to do cleans today, so let's work on our dip, then our dip and shrug, and then dip, shrug, and pull. Those are all really simple, basic movements, but you start watching people piece them together, and then you start identifying things that are being overlooked. You go, okay, well, you got a good dip, and you shrug high, but you're not pulling, you're not extending your hips. So all these little deficiencies that we've allowed to start taking place in complex movements, they're not happening at the individual level. So we address those things, and then the lifts become more fluid. They slow down a little bit. So it really feeds into that part whole method that you talk about a lot.
Yeah. And I think it's, lifting's a good analogy for this or a good example of it, because if you get bad tendencies in sports, could be running, could be lifting, it could be whatever, trying to untrain those is also very difficult. So you get guys who have been doing business the same way for years, and then you go out and you try to help them, or you try to, if you're doing compliance verification or whatever, and it's like, we've never had a problem before. This is the way it's always been done. But it's not right though. Okay, no one's ever been injured, and yeah, you're getting by without having safety issues, but it's like, it's not right. And so same thing with that, though. You have to step back and go, okay, let's look back at the fundamentals. What do the rules and regs say? What are we supposed to be doing? And then you get moving forward again. You start executing it.
Yeah. And just, we're human. Nobody's perfect. No company's perfect. No business is perfect. Even us at Deepwater Subsea, we've had an opportunity to do that over the past couple of weeks from the feedback that, you guys give us, where we've looked back and go, man, we've been so busy pushing guys out, getting work done, that guys have come back and said, hey man, really miss the daily grind videos. Hey, really miss the content you guys are pushing out. The things that we've done foundationally as part of the way we do business and part of what we believe in and constantly giving back to the community, we got sucked into, the operations side that had to be taken care of and let some of that slip. So even as a business, we have to go back to the basics. We have to go back to the fundamentals and find the things that made us great in the first place and start reintroducing them into what we do.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons for this Back to the Basics podcast is just that we're sitting around at lunch talking, and it's like, this is a perfect topic to kind of re-energize what needs to take place and get the videos back out, and just we were always hustling. I mean, hustling's a 24/7 thing, but when you're running in different directions, like Dallas said, sometimes you just have to kind of pause and then reboot and then start over again. So, for us here, back to the basics is something we talk about all the time. It's really getting into the books. It's the black and white of rules and regulations. It's don't overthink the process. And, when Dallas was talking about working out and just sports and stuff, I said, this is a perfect topic to throw into a podcast, because I think we deal with it each and every day. If you're someone who grew up north and if you've driven in the snow, then you move down south, going back up to drive in the snow, you're not going to be as proficient as you used to be. It's not riding a bike. There's skills, there's things that you need to maintain and understand. And so, no, good. Well, I appreciate it, D.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
always it's fun, having some fun with, paparazzi in the background. You hear the camera clicking and stuff. So, it's a team project, and for us here at Deepwater Subsea, we always enjoy giving back to the industry. And people will say, well, this 15 minutes, what's the purpose of it? Well, the purpose of it is to give you something to think about, because, I've had people say before, it's like, Mike, why do you do these? And it's, my peers will make fun of it and they'll laugh at it. And I go, well, it's not for you. It's for that guy who's listening and go, I got something out of that today. It's kind of like the old South Park, at the end of every show, it's like, I learned something today. If you learn something each and every time you listen to one of these, then something good's happening. So we appreciate it. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your attention. And as always, be safe, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. See you.